Okay, good morning. Welcome to my kitchen. Today is Thursday. It's July 27th. We're going to go ahead and get started. I've got my peaches steel covered. They're on the stove. Stove is off. We're going to do two different things today with the peaches, but we're just focusing on the peach slices for right now. Now, I will make this kind of a combo of the peach slices and the peach pies so you guys can follow along if you guys decide to do a homemade peach pie. So there are a few things that you're going to need for your peach pie, and there are a few things that you want to do first before you even touch your peaches. Now I'm going to pull out the recipe that I'm going to use, and I know the video a couple of days ago I showed you. I'm going to show you this again so you guys can see the measurements. I'm doing the peach slices, so this is the peach slices. Now, if you guys are doing a peach pie, and give me a minute. And again, I'm going to show you the recipe. This is for using a 9-inch pie plate. This is the 9-inch pie plate, and these are the instructions. Ignore where you see this spray. And I kind of talked about why my grandmother had spray on her recipe cards, but I figured I'd explain a little bit more. Spray was considered the competitor to Crisco back in the early 1930s. Spray fell out of population in the 50s. It really fell out of favor in the 70s. Is when you could no longer find spray, and spray was taken off the market. Spray is basically a Crisco. It was a little bit richer and a little bit more like a lard versus a Crisco or vegetable shortening. Spray is, like I said, it is incredibly hard to find. It's because it's no longer sold in any commercial supermarket, grocery store, or even finding it online is really hard. And spray is not cheap. If you can find it, it will be really, really expensive. So you can definitely, if the recipe card, and I'm going to show you this again, says the spray, omit that and replace the same measurements with Crisco, because they both will do the same exact thing. Now, if you want to do a little bit bigger of a pie, and I'm going to show you my grandmother's 10-inch pie, this is the ingredients for the 10-inch pie. So now you have your pie dough recipes. I'm going to put these all back really fast so I don't get them confused, because I'm going to do the peach slices. Okay, so now all of your ingredients should be in the refrigerator, and this is, I touched on this a couple of days ago. It is very important when you're doing doughs for pies to make sure all of your ingredients are cold. You need them to be cold in order to make the perfect pie dough. And that's what you're going to want to do first, is the pie dough. Because once you mix all of the ingredients, before you roll out your dough for your pies or your peach slices or your apple slices or any type of pie, the dough needs to be refrigerated for at least an hour, possibly even 2 hours. It makes rolling out the dough much, much easier. There is also one thing that you're going to need, and this is debatable. Martha Stewart uses what I'm going to show you. You can also use cling wrap, plastic wrap, some sort of wrap, because you do need to wrap the dough, form it into a disc, and place it in your refrigerator for the 2 hours that it needs to chill. I've always had a problem doing that. Martha Stewart uses the Glad Press and Seal. And again, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies. These are just what I use on an everyday basis in my house. Now, I have never been fond of cling wrap because I have always had problems with cling wrap sticking together, not forming the correct seal, and drying out my dough. So I'm going to try it with the press and seal today and see how that goes. So you're going to want to get that ready. You're not going to need it though for the time being. So I'm going to put one off to the side. I'm going to put this over on my table for now. I'll put it back in a minute. Okay, so now let's deal with the pie dough and how to make it. You can make it several different ways. You could do it traditionally in a bowl. You can use the fork to fork your thing. I find that really frustrating, and that's usually what gets me into more trouble than what it's worth, which is why I have so many problems when I'm doing pie doughs from scratch, and why I usually run out and just buy a pre-made dough, because I get flustered and I get really, really tired. Well, you don't need to fret. If you have a food processor, you can do this in the food processor. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn you guys around and I'm going to get my KitchenAid. Now, because the peach slices dough recipe uses 5 cups of flour in addition to the over cup of shortening, aka Crisco, you're going to want to make sure that your food processor is at least a 10 cupper or higher. Mine happens to be a 13 cup food processor. You're also going to need a blade. Now, my KitchenAid set came with 3 different blades, metal and plastic. This is considered a dough blade, and it's plastic, it's not metal. I have never had luck with this. In some things I have luck with this, and other things I don't, so I am going to just use my metal cutter. It does not matter if you use metal or plastic. If you have good luck with the plastic, go ahead and use the plastic dough hook, because that's what it was designed for. I'm just making my life a little bit simpler today by using the metal hook versus the plastic hook. So I'm going to start getting things set up, and you want to do this in, like I said, in advance. Usually if you're going to make a peach pie or a peach slice, you're going to want to do this as early as possible. It's not quite noon here, so I have plenty of time to get the peach slices done today. And this, if anybody's wondering, this is my small bowl. This is more for like if I'm shredding cheeses and I don't need to do a lot of cheeses, you can use this bowl, but this bowl is not designed to do dough, and it's too small. So if your food processor comes with multiple bowls, use the main bowl. It will make life much easier to do this. Now, you're going to want to make sure everything is cold. Like I said, there are a few things. The salt and the baking powder, I did not refrigerate. Should you refrigerate it? I went back and watched Martha Stewart. Some say yes, some say no. She did refrigerate hers to get it cold. I don't think those 2 ingredients, because they're smaller amounts, really will amount to much. So, do you need to refrigerate it? Those, no. But I would definitely refrigerate your Crisco, your butter, and your flour, because those are the biggest ingredients that are going to go into your dough. And you want a nice, flaky dough that's going to be baked evenly. So, I'm going to turn you guys around. And I'm going to grab out my flour first. Before I even grab out the shortening, I'm going to measure out my flour. And yes, this is a big bag of flour. And if you're wondering where I get such a big bag of flour, I get this at my local Costco, and this is 12 pounds worth of flour. And it's actually cheaper if you have a membership to either Sam's Club or Costco. I can't speak for Sam's Club because I don't know if Sam's Club carries flour this size, but I know Costco does. And again, I'm not sponsored by Costco, but I have a membership at Costco, and it's cheaper to get the 12 pound, especially because I utilize flour. I do a lot of baking and a lot of cooks that use flour, so it's much more cheaper for me to get a 12 pound bag than a typical 5 pound bag. So I'm going to stop the video because we're at the 10-minute mark. I'll be right back. This, like I said, these are going to be multiple long videos. So bear with me as I do this. We'll get through it, and let's get cooking. Okay, I am back, and I've got my eye on the clock because at noon my clock will be playing a song. So I'm going to hopefully not have too much trouble doing this. Okay, you're going to want 5 cups of flour if you're doing the peach slices. If you're doing a traditional pie, measure out whatever the index cards that I showed you earlier in the earlier segment, what those are. Now, after you've measured out all of your flour, make sure to keep your flour handy on the counter because you're going to need more flour when it comes to rolling out the dough. You're not going to need as much though. And we'll get that. So that, I put my first cup in the food processor, and I'm going to kind of not be able to show you that, but this is cup number 2. I'm going to move this a little bit. I'm going to move you guys over. So actually, I'm going to put you guys where I normally put you guys. That'll make it much easier. And I'll move this out of the way so you can actually see the food processor. Okay, so that was cup number 2. We're going to go on cup number 3. Do you need to sift your flour for the pie dough? No. You just want to make sure you do the dip and scoop measurement. So this is cup number 3. And here comes cup number 4. You might be asking, well, when do you really need to sift flour? You really should sift flour if you're doing cakes, because those are the type that need to be leveled and also need to be stable when you're doing cakes. So that was cup number, hopefully that was cup number 4. Here's cup number 5. I believe that's 5 cups now. Yeah, that was 5 cups. Okay, so we got our 5 cups in. Now, I'm going to add the 2 teaspoons of salt and the half a teaspoon of baking powder. And you always want to make sure you have fresh baking powder. And my baking powder is good through December, so. And the baking powder just helps the crust rise just a little bit. Normally, in recipes that use baking powder, especially this goes more for cakes. If you use baking powder, you also want to use baking soda because the two will help the dough or the cake batter rise. We're not doing cakes, we're doing pies. So this one just used the baking powder. You're not going to use any baking soda. And I'm going to get my thing here, and I need 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. So that's my half teaspoon, and this is my 1 teaspoon. And that's in there. Okay. Now, you're going to need 2 teaspoons of salt. And make sure when you're doing salt that you're using Morton's the iodized salt and not sea salt. Sea salt has the tendency to definitely change the recipe because sea salt is much coarser than iodized table salt. So you're going to want to use a table salt. So we're going to use 2 teaspoons of salt. And that's 1. And 2. Okay, now, this takes 1.5 cups of Crisco. And again, you want to make sure that your Crisco is nice and chilled in the refrigerator. I'm going to put the flour off to the side. Like I said, you're going to need the flour. You are going to need the flour later on when you roll out your dough. So make sure your flour is not put away, that you have some flour. Now what you can do is in a bowl, make sure you cover it while your dough is resting in the refrigerator. You could measure out maybe a cup of flour, 3/4 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of flour. You might need more, you might need less. It all depends on how your dough works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my Crisco. And I also have sticks of Crisco. I also have these sticks. You can use the whole can of Crisco or you can use sticks. It's actually a personal preference. Just make sure they're cold. And unfortunately, I'm going to bring you guys over to the pantry. I know I talked about the fact that, you know, you can use butter-flavored Crisco. And unfortunately, I don't think I have any. I'm looking in my pantry to see if I have any butter-flavored Crisco. That just gives your crust a little bit more buttery flavor, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually change the recipe just a little bit, and we're going to use some actual butter in the recipe. So, I'm going to put you guys down here so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to... Oh, nuts. Bob, did I use this Crisco for frying?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, guys, I'm going to stop the video for a second. I need to ask my husband a question. I'll be right back.